Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, and welcome Claude as well. Hey, so very quickly, just to say, we're going to be recording this session. So we've got the recording on. Hopefully that's okay with everybody. Again, we encourage everybody to keep the cameras on if you're happy with that. We're going to hand over to Claude very briefly, but first we thought it'd be good just to get some feedback from people in terms of what were some of the themes, how did the chat go, use the chat function, what did you discuss in your breakout rooms, and how was the conversation? Is the role of leaders changing? Does it need to change? Did you pick up anything inspirational? So let us know, and then we will be introducing Claude in a second. But let's use the chat. And actually, as we do that, let's multitask because we're in the digital world. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah and to Claude now, and Sarah's going to welcome Claude to the Perspective.
So yes, Claude, a very warm welcome to you here. We're delighted to have you, and I understand you've just hot-footed it off a plane.
I did. Thank you. I'm sorry I was a tiny bit late, but I appreciate you navigating for me.
Thank you. So I've got a couple of questions I'm going to ask you in a moment, but just to acknowledge that you are, I believe, the world's first Chief Heart Officer, and that you've been 7 years in the role, I think, of Chief Heart Officer at Viner Media, working with Gary Vee and the whole team there, with a real emphasis on treating people as fellow human beings, not as numbers. And I also noticed that you've got a BA in transpersonal psychology as well, which caught my attention. And you write extensively and speak about empathy and optimism and the importance of culture in organisations. So we're really eager to hear what you have to say. But a couple of questions to get to know you a little bit better, if I may. So one is, when you were growing up, when you were a kid and you were asked that inevitable question, what do you want to be when you grow up? What was your response?
My response, I had two. I wanted to be a philanthropist and I wanted to be a movie director. And I look at my life now and I think I spent a lot of time in creative advertising agencies. So that's probably the creative part. And then I realized you needed to have a lot of money to be a philanthropist. So I think I found a way to bring value and be of service in a different way without a lot of coins.
Okay. There's many ways of giving.
Yep, totally.
And just final question from me. And it's, who is a superhero for you? And it could be somebody in the public realm, it could be a family member, but who's a purpose superhero who inspires you?
I got to tell you, I'm going to say my Nana, who I talk about a lot. She has been gone now for 5 years, but she was 101 when she passed. And I talk about, I mentioned her quite a bit because here's a person that was born in 1911 and probably, I think, started working when she was 6 and, didn't go to college and all of those things. And I had in my life never, ever met anyone that was as empathetic as her and really, really left people feeling better than they had when they first encountered her. And one of the stories I tell a lot is, we would go into the shop whenever I was with her. I'd drive her around, we'd go into the shops or the bank or the flower shop. And as she was collecting her money, her change, she would look up and you'd have a badge on your shirt and it'd say Sarah, and she'd say, Sarah. And you'd look down and you'd say, yes. And she'd say, would you do me a favor and have a peaceful day? And that was it. And so for me, that's the end all be all of really a generous spirit and someone that it cost nothing to her. It took 2 seconds and it was the kindest thing ever. So would you do me a favor, have a peaceful day? Like, really, at 99 years old, that's what you're saying to people? So she continues to be my superhero up in the sky somewhere.
Yeah, oh, thank you for sharing that with us. And it sounds like she was able to create real moments of connection with people.
1,000%, 1,000,000%. Yeah. Thank you for the two questions. I love those questions.
Well, as I say, we're delighted to have you here. Thank you again for taking the time
Thank you.
swing by. And Claude, the floor is yours to share
Oh.
whatever you'd like to share with us. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to bring up a deck and just to talk around it, not because I love PowerPoint, because I actually don't, but let me just get there. And one moment, people can now see your screen. Okay, well, let's turn that off for a second. And you're going to hear most likely you're going to hear my kids in the back, an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old very soon, if not already. So forgive me. Let's see this load up here. The one thing I couldn't do in the Uber is get this loaded. All right. What I would love to do in the comments is a couple things. If you would just say where you're from, that would be great. So, you know, Kathy, wherever, Dublin or whatever. And if you know of VaynerMedia, or if you know of my boss, Gary Vaynerchuk, just so I have a little bit of a frame of reference. Cool. I love it. I love hearing, like, if some people do, if some people don't. It's a big world. And then sometimes when certainly when you're in America, you're like, who doesn't know him? But I love when I get to speak to the rest of the world that might not know him or might not know of us. And it's all great. All right, so let's go here. Did that open? All right, we are going to start with a video, and I'm hoping you're going to be able to hear it. So here we go.
You could have ended up being a bus, a tree. You're a student. All you want to do is read and consume and ponder and make pretend and talk about how you're gonna. Fuck you're gonna. Go do it. It took me a long time to hire the person to really run our HR. Her name is Claude Silver. She's our Chief Heart Officer. She, on the org chart, sits ahead of my COO and my CFO. She's the second most important person in my company. She leads
just
with
the flag. We can hear, but we can't see the video.
People that listen. Interesting. Okay.
You can hear.
Okay.
You can hear but not see.
All right. Let's stop then. Let's move forward. No biggie. And let's get into the presentation. I will say I've been at Vayner almost 8 years, and we'll talk a little bit about the role of Chief Heart Officer and really how I go about sharing empathy throughout the walls, and what we do now on screen, and building cultures of psychological safety and belonging and bravery. So I really love this quote by Maya Angelou. I start every presentation with it. I have it in several different places in my office, and it's just that important. And if you think about what I was just sharing about my Nana, it's really, case in point. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And for me, the end all be all is how we make someone feel. Whether or not you are in the world of HR, you're a leader, you're a manager, you're a human being, making someone feel better, kinder, they have a smile, you gave them their attention, is really all that matters. So you weren't able to see Gary, but that's who I work for. You heard his voice and his F-bomb there. When I started, when we sat down to create the role of Chief Heart Officer, I had never been in HR before. I had never wanted to be in HR before, actually. I had been a strategist for a very long time in creative advertising agencies and working on global brands that you and I both shop for now. And when I was living in London, actually, and I met Gary. He moved me over to America, and I started as his first senior vice president on the client partnership side. And one thing led to another, and he had me going and visiting all of these other offices, even though my client was in New York, New Jersey area. And I said, that's great, I'm happy to do that, but why? Why? And he said, just go do that thing that you do. And I knew right then and there, that thing that I do is the thing I love doing, which is being with people, creating space, making time for people, making people feel like they have a judgment-free zone to just grow, share, riff, whatever it is, and that I don't have to have all the answers. And one thing led to another, and we decided to create this role because I was better suited here. I'm playing to my strengths here. And when I said to him a couple of things when we started the role, I said, what are we doing here? What are we building? Because you obviously want to get behind the leader's vision. And he said, we want to build the single greatest human organization in the history of time. And Gary's an incredibly aspirational person, as are a lot of entrepreneurs. But I said, you know what, I can get behind this. This is going to be a job never done, and I want to figure out how to do this. My second question to him was, how do we know if I'm successful? There, what are my KPIs? And he said, you will infuse empathy throughout the entire organization and impact and touch every single employee. Well, we're 1,500 now. I was number 287 when we joined. So I quickly had to figure out, and I continue to figure out and work with people to scale that, right? I can't touch everyone. I don't have magic powers, but there are different ways I'm going to walk through how I believe I scale the ability to infuse empathy and leave people feeling better, make sure that people feel like they belong, so forth and so on.
Claude, sorry to cut in, just to say that on the screen we can just see your brightly coloured screen, not the presentation yet.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, we can hear you, see your face, but I think there's a screen share to manage there. So.
Okay, it does say you are screen sharing.
Maybe it's the two, normally in a Mac, maybe if you have two desktops or something, maybe it's sharing the other one. But
there we go.
No, I don't. I only
No.
have me. I only have me. Words alone are great, though. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's true.
That's awesome. All right, let's try it one more time, okay? And if not, then we'll just talk.
it's the same.
There.
Okay.
All right. Well, you can see the pretty screen, but I will stop screen sharing.
Okay, words alone are good.
Yeah, all right. But this gives us a more of an opportunity to do some Q&A also. So I asked him, how do we know if I'm successful? And my job now is to really figure out how to make people feel seen, make them feel better, make them feel like they belong. Like I said, I didn't start in HR. I am in HR now, but I renamed the department People and Experience the minute I started, because just common sense dictated that that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people and the experience that they have from the moment they send their CV in to their last day at the company, and quite frankly, beyond, because we have an alumni program where we want to place people and, put people into their strengths. If they're not going to be an A player with us, they might be an A player at that food service company or at that social media network, whatever. The reason I really got into this work in the beginning is I was one of those people that didn't do well in school. I'll go back in time just a little bit. Didn't do well in school, really didn't feel like I fit in. I felt like I had this missing chip most of the time. And the messages I received as a youngster, 13, 14 years old, from my parents, while it came with such love, the message was, you think too much with your heart. Why don't you think with your head? You have to learn how to think with your head. And for a 13, 14-year-old person, it could be a little bit damaging. It wasn't a challenge. It was more like, well, this is just who I am. I had to learn how to think critically. I had to actually take a class called Critical Thinking Skills. And in doing that, as I started to understand what my superpower is in terms of being able to empathize and focus on intuition and whatnot, I had to also learn how to protect my energy, because for many of us empaths, we can easily become a sponge if we're not careful enough and we're not aware of how much energy or how much we're taking on. I often say empathy is like being a passenger with someone. Like I'm riding in the car with them. I'm riding in the passenger seat with them. but by no means am I sharing the driver's seat with them. And it's just a metaphor that I use for myself often so that I can just create a little bit of space, and create a space where they are there, they can have their feelings, but I don't leave wrecked, and I can get out of bed every day. The other things I heard as a youngster were, you need to focus on your weaknesses, get stronger on your weaknesses. And that potential only had a shelf life. And again, these messages, a lot of us hear in different ways. They left me feeling really like I just didn't belong. I didn't belong in the working world. I just didn't know where I belonged. I fell into the world of advertising. I was off to get my master's in social work. That's what I wanted to do, be a psychotherapist. And I figured out that there are other ways to really be of service and help and provide value with people. I was in San Francisco, it was 1998, and it was the dot-com boom, the first one. And lo and behold, I got asked to be a project manager at an internet.com company. For those of us that remember, internet.com company. I think we've had Web 2, Web 1. I don't know where we are right now. I was working in a grocery store, and I was managing the grocery store. And this gentleman asked me if I wanted to work for him. And so off I went into this wide open, wild, wild west world of digital. And what I started to learn a new trade, a new skill, which was really important to me. But I also started to focus in on my leadership abilities, because I knew I wanted to be of service. I wanted to help. I had a heart to help. I'm like that player coach that, I'm on the field, but also, you can pass me the ball, but I really want to pass you the ball and help you score. So anyway, I tell you that story just to go back in time a little bit. It's really important. It has always been important for me to really notice where I see people not feeling like they fit in, not feeling like they belong, when their imposter syndrome or limiting beliefs creep up. I had that for a very long time. I had to learn how to catch myself in that negative story that we tell ourselves. Turns out, I found out the stat a while ago that 85% of the voices in our head are all negative. And out of that 85%, 95% are all on repeat. So for a very long time, I told myself this: you're dumb, you're dumb, you're dumb, you're dumb, you're dumb. I mean, until I no longer went for the gold. I didn't give myself any options, right? If you just hear that repetitively. Thankfully, I worked with a coach in my 30s, and I was able to spot that. Now I bring that into Vayner in terms of the coaching I do. We have 1,500 people. And my job is to touch every single employee. My days are filled with 15-minute meetings, whether or not someone's reached out to me, or I've proactively reached out to them, or I get a bunch of people together and do a culture jam session. It doesn't really matter. The focus right now, as we've all been home now for almost 2 years, has been, burnout, anxiety, mental health, emotional health, and how can we take care of our people while they are doing work for us, right? And so our whole belief is that you put people first, and what that really means is kindness is the bedrock in which we plant all the seeds. Kindness, being the bigger person. And in fact, in our job descriptions, we have, if you're in a more or less experienced role, it'll say learning what being the bigger person means. The next job will say being the bigger person. The next job will say being the bigger person in every situation. The next job will say teaching others to be the bigger person. So we really focus on holistic learning. I made a point to change the way we hired 6 years ago from culture fit to skill set fit and culture addition. Why did I do that? When I joined, I was, as I said, I was number 289, 287 or 289. I was probably one of the 3 oldest people. I was a senior female in a kind of a boys club. Nothing wrong with that. We don't have that now. But it was really apparent to me as I walked the halls that we had a lot of apples and apples and apples and apples. And very, very, very seldomly did we have a banana or an orange. You know, we had a lot of people that looked alike, that sounded alike, that came from the same tri-state area in the States. And we needed to diversify our floor, not only because it's the right thing to do, because it is the right thing to do, and create an inclusive culture, but we were missing out on the uniqueness that other people bring us from other cultures that believe in other religions, that have different sexual preferences, that look differently, that speak differently. So when we started to hire for skill set first and culture addition, it allowed us to look at a job description, see if Amanda or Lucy actually fit this job description more or less. We hired them for that, but also because we could tell that they were a good person. We could tell that we asked enough questions about their leadership style or how they like to work in projects, and we got a sense of their self-awareness or their interest in learning about themselves. And I'm really happy to say that really has really created a very inclusive culture now all over the place, where, with the exception, I would say probably of Singapore, which we still need to do some work on there. But that was really incredible to do. We've done a lot of interviewing training and a lot of unconscious bias training, so that we are focused on both the pipeline of recruitment, especially in this era of the Great Resignation, but also the retention and promoting from within. And we found that we were losing a lot of people, especially a lot of our BIPOC people, our people of color, right around the director level. Well, why was that? Because we didn't have anyone that looked like them or talked like them in senior leadership or the C-suite. And that was a really big aha for us. So about, I would say 3 years ago, we made that change and we started to diversify our C-suite and our senior leadership, which has been really, really excellent. I'm just going to talk about culture a little bit, and then I'd love to see if anyone has any questions. I haven't been looking in the chat, but if anyone does, feel free to ask them or we can chat through them. Culture for me is a vibe. Culture is very much alive. Culture is a set of people that express what's on their hearts and their minds. I don't believe that. I do believe culture can be tribal, which is an extreme, but we want culture to be, again, as inclusive as we possibly can. And that means to really identify the uniqueness, putting people into their strengths, their positions of strength, identify their uniqueness, making sure that, as I said, that we're hiring, we're recruiting, we're retaining. And more than anything, we want people to leave people better. So when I ask my boss, Gary, what do you want me to focus on right now? And he will say, exterminate the fear. Okay, well, that's a really big statement. How do I do that? I've got to make sure that I know what's going on in different offices with different teams with different people, or my team does, right? Or the people that I've informally named culture champions. And the culture champions, by the way, are people that have full-time jobs. I just know that they happen to have very similar beliefs in people. They are optimists. They want the best for people. They'll go out of their way to stay an hour later to teach someone a PowerPoint hack or whatever. These people are culture champions, and I have them in every single office. When a newbie starts, I should say, we do these stay interviews, by the way. So we have orientation. We have a week-long orientation for every single person, no matter your level. But then we have a 60-day stay interview. And on that interview, we're asking you 3 questions. Have you met with your manager? Do you know what your roles and responsibilities are? And have you met anyone outside of your team? If you have not met anyone outside of your team, that's when I will introduce you to my 10 people over here, my 5 people over here. And I'll say, hey, David and Sarah and Joe, please meet Juliana. She's new, so forth and so on. She loves playing football. Have a 15-minute coffee chat with her. And that's how we start to scale also. And then Juliana is going to say, hey, Alberto, do you have anyone else for me to meet? And Alberto will say, yeah, I think you should meet these 3 other people in all different varieties of the company. And that is how you get to see like why people are at Vayner. We've been here for 13 years. We've only been around for 13 years and we've had such massive growth. The secret sauce is the connective tissue. The secret sauce is that everyone likes to be treated well. The secret sauce is that everyone likes challenging work. The secret sauce is that we have a lot of longevity in the company, people that have been there, a good 4 to 10 years. And in that longevity, you learn how to have shorthand with one another. You can read each other, So I'm just going to pause there for a second and see if there's any questions I can answer, or we can talk about anything.
There's a question from Lucy. I think, I don't know, Lucy, would you like to unmute yourself and maybe ask the question yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alberto. Hi, Claude. Thanks
Hi.
for coming. I was intrigued by your chunking up of many of your meetings into 15-minute slots, and you're clearly not about superficiality and dashing through things. So I was very curious about how you sort of presence yourself, frame the meeting, do anything to ensure that the person you're meeting with gets what they want out of it.
Thank you for the question. I love it. The first thing I do is I don't have any expectations of what's going to happen, who's going to pop onto the screen or who's going to walk in through the door, which helps me a lot. I also know that I don't have to have the end all be all answers, and I am just like them. My blood is as red as theirs. So I think that neutralizes everything at first. And then someone that I don't know pops on the screen. Hi, how are you? I always like to ask where people are in this day and age, how they're doing and all, and all of that stuff. And then if they don't say like, oh, I had a question for you, then I'll start with some just casual talk. What do you do here? How did we find you? Again, this is for someone that I've never met before. What do you do? How did we find you? I like to hear where they come from. I like to big up that and make them feel good, right? And then I'll either say, is there something you wanted to talk about, something you want to talk about? Can I answer any questions? Or if I know them, or if I have an inkling, a spidey sense, I will say, let's play, oh my God, Rosebud Thorn. I just forgot it. Rosebud Thorn. And this is for people at a more junior level. Rose is what's going well. Bud is an opportunity you're looking forward to. And Thorn is a challenge. Thorn is something you want to tell me about. Thorn is something, if I had a magic wand, we could fix. Oftentimes they will say, you mean at work? And I'll say, at work, at life, it doesn't really matter. So this space that I'm creating right here, that we're creating, is our space. Anything can happen in here. Yesterday I had a lot of anxious people with mental health issues coming in, anxiety, depression. I want to switch teams. Anything can happen. So the most important thing is creating that psychological safety where they know I'm just like them. When someone says to me, Claude, oh God, thank you so much for your time. I know you're so busy. I say, we're all busy. Like there's the flattening of hierarchy is what I aim to do immediately and set someone feeling like they can be themselves with me. And by the way, like if someone says to me, I just had my performance review and I've had a lot of careless mistakes, and I'll say, you know what, I'm dyslexic and I use this program. Have you thought about this program before? Or someone reading yours? I want to make them feel like whomever they are is absolutely fine, absolutely great. And we will help them in the best way we can within our means. Thanks for the question. By the way, there's a lot you can get done in 15 minutes if you have that intention. It's beyond. And then sometimes I'll say, hey, I want to get more time with you. I'll go set, we'll set up a half an hour for next week, or I'll send them some coaching questions that I think they'll enjoy pondering. And then, if I'm speaking to people that are like VP and above or other C-suite, like that's almost more of like a, by no means am I their therapist, I'm not qualified, but it's almost more like, hey, I'm really having this problem. Hey, I really want to talk to so-and-so and get a raise. Hey, I really want to, it's much more pointed. Like, how can I have the conversation with Gary? Those types of things. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Any other?
Well, we had a, oh, sorry.
Yeah, please.
We had an interesting discussion going on when you talked about the negative thoughts, and Tim Elliott shared some stats from a study. And Tim, I don't know if you want to come in here, but he's in particular, 4 out of 5 C-suite execs feel overwhelmed, underprepared for the people and planet challenges they face. And so Tim, I don't know if you want to share with us that study, but it'd be interesting to, because the topic of the day is how do leaders stand up in 2022 and beyond. And, do you see, because you talked about how you sort of conquered your own negative self-talk, but, for leaders in particular, who are not only in charge of themselves, but they're in charge of other people, how do they manage that? And then I think we've also got a question from Quinn as well.
Cool. This was something that really, really roared its head after the murder of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter in America, when we had a lot of raw emotion just in the agency and in the world, let's be honest, certainly in America, where there was enormous amounts of raw emotion and enormous amounts of sensitivity. And I'm just going to give you one quick example of something that was a miss. And this is why I ended up bringing in a lot of diversity, racism, anti-racism, and allyship training in the summer and fall of 2020 for only VP and above, so C-suite also. A person of color who was on the creative department came into their Monday morning meeting. This is right after George Floyd, right after the riots that had happened. And the leader innocently and unconsciously said to everyone, how's everyone doing with COVID? That's an okay question. However, we had just come off of a terrible weekend of riots, a monstrosity. And the country was crumbling. And here was a person of color who all she wanted was someone to identify, like, are you doing okay? Do you want to have does anyone want to turn their camera off? Does anyone need a mental health day? Yada, da, 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 da. So she came to me and he came to me unbeknownst. And I was so glad that he came to me and he said, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to answer these questions. I don't know how to hold space. And it turned out, who does? I mean, this is very, very, very tricky times. So training, bringing in, we brought in professional coaching for all of our SVPs on up to C-suite also. And everyone got coaching, private coaching for 9 months. And so that's what we've done. I mean, we spend a lot of time with people, a lot of time with people, helping them figure out where they want their growth opportunities to be, especially in leadership when sometimes no one asks anymore. So hopefully that was a little bit of an example of that time.
Yeah, great share. We got a hand up from Quinn.
Quinn.
So Quinn, do you want to unmute?
Yep, thank you. And love everything I've heard so far. A couple of things have come up, and we talked about the Great Resignation, and then you've mentioned some of what you do for hiring. And I'm just curious. It seems to me there's also maybe a great realignment that's happening right now. And as we look at, how have you seen, either people leaving, retention on your side, but also being able to attract people who maybe recognize they're not aligned with where they were and maybe would be more aligned with where, what you are, what the culture you've created.
Yeah, I love the question, and hope your family's okay after COVID. No. We got cut off on that.
Yeah.
So let me see which way I want to take this. The Great Resignation has happened and is happening, and I think there's a lot of hype around that too. I think what we've seen is there are poachable people that are getting poached because they're great, or they show aspiration of being great, and this company and that company can pay 30K more. They can pay 10K more. They can pay whatever more. I do think that there is going to be, as you say, the great return or the great realignment. And that's going to, the thing that is really going to make or break that, I believe, are a couple things. One, and in no order, if we can figure out hybrid work, because to your point, why are people leaving? The first thing when someone gets on the phone, they're like, and our recruiters are talking to them about the job that they just applied for. The first question is it remote? First question. That is the first question. And so we've had to give agency to remote work in some states. We can't operate a business in 50 states and then in all these countries, because each state is different in the United States. So yes, you can have remote, but what we really need to nail down is hybrid work, is the changing in leadership. You and I are reading the same HBR articles and the same Forbes articles and the same, NAB article on leadership being more vulnerable, showing more emotional bravery and courage, having more transparent conversations, being more authentic. Like those aren't just words on the page. We have to rise to that challenge. And I really think there are so many of us that want to rise to that challenge, because I think a lot of us know that it has been an archaic way of working for so long, top down, hierarchical, ivory tower. I don't need to even go into it. We all know what I'm saying. So making sure that we can answer the question of hybrid work, making sure that we can answer the question of all the brands that we work on, those things that they are still shiny toys to people. And then I want to share this thing that we did in April of 2020. We created 2 brand new roles. One is called a post-creative strategist. One is called a creator role. In doing this, we have brought in a swath of people that are, I would say, 19, 20, 21 years old. They are creators. They are all over TikTok. They are all over figuring out, what the sentiment is, all of this stuff. They are at a low wage. The hope is that they stay with us, and we would start to get them into the funnel in terms of the creative department and whatnot, and retain them. Because once you get us, and we're a different kind of company, once you get us, we want to keep you. It would take so much longer to train and hire and train, and it's very expensive. So we also, I should say, removed the need for a college education when I started the role, unless you're like in the legal department or the finance department, of course. But we want to make sure that we can answer the question of what are you doing about mental health. And we have an incredible company that we've partnered with called Journey, that is like Netflix for mental health, emotional health, and it's a whole other thing that 1,500 people around the world can use at the same time and figure out, take the 3-minute meditation on sleep, or the 5-minute meditation on anxiety, and all of that stuff. So these are the questions that we get. And the questions are really all about, what are you going to do for me? And that's different, certainly different than my time when I was applying for jobs on monster.com. It was really, what are you going to do for us, Claude? So anyway, it's a wild, wild time.
More than just a foosball table too, right?
And being at home, there ain't no foosball table.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
But I will say, surprise and delight and acts of serendipity are so much fun for us to do. And when we're all on screen here, I mean, yes, there's an intimacy because we're looking right at each other, especially if you're with 1 or 2 people, but also like, you have to lean in that much further, right? Because I can only see you from the neck up, and I have no idea if you're sitting there and you're bouncing your foot up and down, or you're picking your nails, or you're nervous or whatnot. But what I can do, and what all of us can do, is we can listen. So you listen with your eyes, you listen with your ears. And you know what? That person that just worked on that Super Bowl ad for the last 6 weeks, thanks, Lucy. That person that just worked and, you know, that team that just worked on the Super Bowl for the last 6 weeks and they didn't have any kind of break and whatnot. I'm going to ask their managers, like, what is that person into? And maybe it's an Airbnb certificate, or maybe it's a bottle of wine, or maybe it's bath salts. I can't give them the time back, but we can acknowledge the hard work.
Okay, well, thank you, Claude. I think we've reached the end of our hour. But thank you for sharing so much, and there's so much there that resonated with me and with I think so many people on the call and from the stuff in the chat. So first, I just wanted to say thank you. One of the things that we like to do is try and get a screenshot in the so if everybody could put their best smiles on, and I think Alberto is always in charge of the screenshot.
I'm the official screenshot maker, I think, or taker. So I have 2 screens, so I'm gonna take 2 pictures. So smile twice because you don't know where you are. So 1, 2, 3. That was 1, and I'm gonna switch to the next one. And I'm gonna count till 3. 1, 2, 3. Smile. And that was it. Thank you very much, Claude, for inspiring us.
Thank you. I'm
everyone.
so sorry. Sorry about the PowerPoint, but I think it was better just to chat.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant just chatting. So thank you so much, Claude.
Thank you, everyone. Be well. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And in 2 weeks' time, we have another session. You know, I'll keep you posted. We will keep you posted, and hopefully see you again in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Bye.